welcome back. I'm Marc, and I teach art for a living. But like many of you, I'm sure, back in the days when I was just starting, I thought that it was normal and that everybody just drew a sketch first or a drawing and then colored it. Like, you needed that solid foundation or the rest of the process would just fall apart. And the result would just look like garbage. Except if you're watching this, you're probably waiting for me to tell you that that's not in fact something that you need at all, because painting without a sketch genuinely has some crazy benefits that nobody seems to talk about. And I think a lot of them will actually surprise you quite a bit. So today I'll show you exactly why ditching the sketch, at least sometimes, might be the best thing you can do for your art. Let's get right into it. So as I go over some of the benefits here, I'll actually be showing my process of doing exactly that, starting a painting without any sketch, so you get an example of what I'm talking about. But yeah, the first benefit, in my opinion, is that you just get started much faster. There's no staring at a blank canvas wondering what I'm gonna paint, paralyzed. There's no erasing and redrawing the same line over and over again until it's perfect before even going into colors. And even now, I'm pretty guilty of doing that when I work with line art first. So instead here, I'm not gonna really think about anything, and I'm just gonna go right into it. Start drawing, because I think most artists don't really realize, but like that perfect sketch first mentality actually ends up creating more anxiety, not less. And I know you can relate. We tell ourselves stuff like, this sketch has to be right, or everything that comes after that will suck. It'll just be wrong if the sketch is wrong. And obviously that carries a lot of weight before you've even started anything. When you paint without a sketch, you're working with values and colors right from the start. You block in a rough silhouette, throw down some colors, and then boom, you're already seeing something that looks like an image. That's a generous way of describing it at this point. But already there's more dimensions to the art. It's not just black lines on white canvas. And within your brain, this actually helps the dopamine hit a lot sooner, which hopefully keeps you motivated and engaged almost right away. Working this way, there's way less pressure to be perfect, because we're not really committing to any like proportions or like locking in a specific pose. Even the composition is all up in the air at this point. We're exploring, blocking things in, seeing what works. The fact that it's lower stakes at this point is what allows us to stop overthinking and just get started. And here's the thing, action creates momentum. Once you've got a couple colors on the canvas, even if it's rough, your brain just shifts from, I need to blend this perfectly, to, well, now I gotta make this work. And that shift is actually huge to help you finish pieces. It's exactly like that image we've all seen, I'm sure. Like, make it exist first, and then you can make it good. Now, the second benefit of not using a sketch is that it actually makes things more forgiving, not less. Like, maybe that sounds backwards, but hear me out. Like, when you have a detailed line art, I think we all become like psychologically locked in, emotionally invested. You know, you spend time on the drawing and now the drawing is done and you just need to kind of finish it up, right? Adding colors, all that kind of stuff. But if you realize halfway through that like something's not working, like the composition is off, the proportions messed up, there's this initially what you thought was a perfect sketch looking at you going like, but Papa, I was correct before. You loved me then. Are you gonna abandon me now? The sketch doesn't talk, but that's kind of what I used to feel, you know, back in the days. Like, it was genuinely hard for me to make changes to the sketch because I had spent so much time working on it. And it felt like I was just throwing away good work. All those super crisp lines I have spent like a lot of time, you know, finessing. How can I throw that work away? But when you're painting without a sketch, everything is fluid. Those rough shapes you blocked in aren't precious. You know, you can shift them around, resize them, repaint entire sections without feeling like you're destroying hours of, you know, detailed line work. You're just like sculpting shapes in 2D, like playing around, you know, with mud, except it's on a canvas instead. And I feel like this makes you way more likely to actually fix mistakes when you see them instead of trying to work around them. Like, the painting just comes together shape by shape from rough to more precise. And I think it's pretty basic psychology. This kind of workflow makes you much less emotionally attached to like any part of the process. So in theory, there should be much less hesitation to rework anything, because, you know, the whole thing will tend to look pretty messy until you reach the end. Like, I personally discovered this by chance when I was really getting into speed painting, like back in 2006, because prior to that I was only working on line art and then colors. But then going through many years of just painting without lines completely changed how comfortable I became just painting over anything that I don't see as just final, you know? All right, now here's a benefit that I would think is a little bit less obvious, but way more important long term. painting without a sketch forces you to think in terms of values and form instead of lines. Lines, like we draw them, like when you draw characters, don't exist in nature. I'm sure you've noticed. They're more like a shorthand, like a symbol system. When you rely on line art, you're thinking in edges and outlines. But when you paint without a safety net, you have to think about how forms actually exist in space as shapes with lights and shadows, as volumes that overlap and interact. And experts say this makes you a better painter, period. You start to understand how to build form with values instead of just filling between the lines. The same way you start to see edges as transitions between values, not like drowned boundaries. In other words, your brain shifts from coloring inside the lines to sculpting with darkness and light. And obviously, I think it's good to mention that you don't necessarily need to go right into colors. That can be kind of intimidating. So working with black and white only at first, and then adding colors later. Maybe using something like gradient maps like I show in some of my coloring videos. That works just as well. This skill transfers to everything. Even when you do use sketches in the future, you'll approach them differently because you'll understand form at a deeper level. It'll help you draw things more three-dimensional without relying on the lines to do most of the heavy lifting. It's like learning to ride a bike without your training wheels. It's harder at first, of course, but once you get it, it unlocks so many possibilities. You become a better rider. Now, if you want to develop that kind of understanding, like fundamental understanding across all fundamentals, form, value, colors, composition, all of it, in a structured way. Well, that's exactly what my art program does, which is the sponsor of this video. It's a complete curriculum equivalent to a bachelor's of fine arts, but of course, because it's my specialty, focused on digital arts and designed to actually take you from zero newbie to a professional level. A couple of days ago, we just flew past an insane milestone, reaching 30,000 registered students, so I have something special for you to celebrate. Usually, my big holiday sale starts sometimes in December, and I know a lot of you wait for that time to snatch up the program at a massive discount. But for the first time ever, I'm starting it now. So if you want that structured path with a community of other artists learning alongside you, check the link in the video description to learn all about the program and take advantage of the biggest discount that I've ever offered on the world's most popular arts education from home. Grab it while you can, or even gift it to someone with the gift option on the checkout page. Happy holidays, that's too soon for that. All right, back to the video. All right, now here's another benefit that's more psychological maybe, but just as important. Painting without the sketch builds genuine confidence in your ability to create. A sketch is training wheels, like I've mentioned, and training wheels are great when you're learning, but eventually you need to take them off to actually feel the freedom of writing. When you paint without that net, you prove to yourself that you can create something from nothing. You don't need the crutch. And that confidence affects how you approach every piece. So instead of thinking like, I hope this works out, you'll start to think, I'll make this work. Of course, it takes a couple of times to get to that point, but it's a huge mental shift. I have more experience now, so I'm mostly confident my line arts will turn out good once colored, but I got to that point by painting without for many years. Early on, I clearly remember always wondering, hoping my line art would make a good colored drawing, never really knowing for sure, and most of the time just feeling disappointed because it didn't. I really think working without the lines was a key phase in my art journey that's helped transform my confidence 100%. Plus, I think it makes you way more adaptable as a professional, if that's ever the goal. Like when clients need quick concepts, you can just bang them out. When inspiration hits and you have like a character in mind or something, you don't have to draw your little character mannequin, worry about proportions too much. No, instead you just start. Get something on the canvas as soon as possible, and then you make it good. And honestly, that might be personal, but I think it's way more fun. There's something super exciting about watching an image emerge from loose shapes and colors, not really knowing exactly how it'll turn out. You're kind of discovering the painting as you make it, instead of executing a predetermined plan, like when working off of a drawing. All right, now let's move on to the final benefit. Painting without a sketch gives you way more flexibility in how you finish a piece. So when you sketch first, you're committed to a certain level of finish before you even know if the idea is working. Even if your sketch is really sketchy. Now you might say, well, a sketch can be super loose, but then again, it rarely stays loose. Like most of the time you'll draw the first sketch and then you'll refine it and maybe refine it some more a third time and then move on to colors. That's what most artists do. Like not everybody, of course, but most artists. But when you start with shapes and colors, like composition and values first, then you decide on the fly how far to take it. You've seen me work in the background here, like I start with basic shapes for all the components, add shadows, then lights, and if it's not working after an hour, I didn't waste much time and I can just try something else. But if I like where it's going, well, I can just keep pushing it, adding more details until I get to something like this, somewhat rendered. I think this took about 3 hours, but if I wanted, I could spend double that, triple that, you know, taking it to print quality, just rendering the crap out of this. And I love that flexibility, like you can leave yourself options instead of being locked into one path. And because you're problem solving throughout the entire process, constantly thinking about what's working, what needs adjustment, you develop faster as an artist. It's like a tough workout at the gym, like maybe not ideal every time you go, but once in a while, it really helps unlock more potential. All right, look, I'm not saying that you should never use sketches, obviously. Sketches certainly have their place. I use them very often, especially for more complex pieces or for like client work, stuff like that. Or maybe you're more of a beginner and you're still learning a lot and you need more of that structure. Painting without a sketch, if you have like decent fundamentals, has so many benefits that every artist should at least try it once in a while, like fairly regularly. You'll start faster, iterate easier, develop better form understanding, build real confidence, and in my opinion, gain incredible workflow flexibility. So try it this week. Pick something simple, maybe like a portrait, a simple character, like a quick scene, work from a reference or from imagination, whatever you prefer really, doesn't matter, but block things in with paint, no lines. See how it feels. I bet you'll be surprised at how freeing it is. Now, earlier in the video, I did mention something about starting in grayscale only and then moving on to colors using gradient maps. And if you want to know exactly how to do that, well, I have the tutorial just for you. So check it out. It'll be up on screen here in a second. I'll see you there.